Welcome to the SMB Community Podcast, produced by the Small Biz Thoughts technology community, with your hosts, Amy Vabenchek, James Kernan, and Carl Polachuk. We're dedicated to making every IT professional a successful IT professional. Welcome to another SMB Community Podcast. I am very, very excited to have a cool guest on today. CJ Ezell is a member of the Small Biz Thoughts technology community, super active in ASCII, super active in pretty much everything. So you own a managed service business and you have started up a couple of other businesses. And today we're going to talk about one of them, but let's start with who you are and how you got where you are.
Sure. So like I said, my name is CJ. I own an MSP called Point Clear Networks, which is based out of Fairhope, Alabama. And for those of you not familiar with the Alabama geography, which I imagine is probably the majority of the folks out there, Fairhope is down on the coast just outside of Mobile, so we're right off the Gulf of Mexico. And this is actually my second MSP. So I owned another IT services company called the ASI Group that I started in 2002. We specialized in the dental vertical. And in 2010, I sold that company to Henry Schein, which is the owner of Dentrix, which is
nice.
obviously, one of the big players in the dental world. And I worked for Schein for a couple of years and just did not enjoy the big corporate Fortune 500 environment. So I left and went back out on my own and started Point Clear Networks in 2013. And through kind of by extension, the healthcare vertical seems to be once again what we've been drawn into. So a majority of our MSP
So I knew that you
healthcare.
had the background in the dental.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still doing dental, or are you just doing other stuff? So
dental in our MSP business still makes up probably 85% of our customer base. It was one of those situations where when we started Point Clear Networks, we did a mailer to a lot of our old clients. We still had an offsite backup component of our old business that we retained ownership of, and we had a relationship with a lot of those clients through that. And when we expanded that back out into managed services, majority of those old clients came back fairly quickly. So we started, when we started up, we were back 100% dental. And then, here we are 6-7 years later, we've been able to kind of get it down to about 85% dental, but we are still very, very heavy healthcare. Even so, of the 15% that's not dental, the vast majority of that is other healthcare, like chiropractors, optometrists, that sort of stuff.
Right. So this is a bit of a sidetrack from the main topic, but I love when I hear people who are successful in a specific vertical. Can you talk about what the benefits are to you? Because you've done it twice now.
Sure. So, well, it's the benefits of developing a niche are it gives you a foundation to build repeatable processes, right? So at this point in time in my career, I've probably been in 2,000 dental offices across the country, and so I just it helps to streamline my process when I go in, because I know exactly what I'm looking for. I know exactly what they need, and so it cuts down on the amount of discovery time that I need to do. It cuts down on the amount of time it takes me to build a quote, and it cuts down on our delivery time, and then our installation time, because we're able to repeat a lot of the same processes over and over. And obviously, from an operational standpoint, that's a great thing. From a sales perspective, it's nice because I was lucky that very early on in my first business, I was able to shadow a friend of mine who was a dentist. He allowed me to come into his office for a day or two and basically just kind of walk behind him and learn the terminology, learn the workflows, the processes, which really helped me then turn around and design that solution for him. And then I was able to take that and just kind of expand upon it. So that's kind of how we got started down the dental path.
Right. Well, I know you know Brian Courier.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I sat in on a sales cycle for him, and I got to tell you, I was so impressed with his ability to speak the language and to be accepted as an insider by dentists. Because even though they know he's not a dentist, he used terminology that I I'd just be making stuff up, right?
Exactly. And that's definitely one of the benefits of having a niche is you get to learn the language. And that is a huge benefit for us, and especially in dental, because the dental community is kind of, I was just talking to somebody else about this the other day. It's kind of weird. They really like to work with people that do work specifically in the dental space, right? So they like to feel like they're working with specialists. And so when you can speak their language and you understand their workflow, and you're talking intelligently about their business processes, it gives you an extra layer of credibility that the general MSP IT person is not going to have. I mean, anybody can walk in and say, yes, we're going to put computers at the front desk, and we're going to put a firewall in, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. But, then I come in behind them and I say, okay, doc, well, in this operatory, do you want a 12 o'clock setup? Do you want a 6 o'clock setup? Are you right-handed, left-handed? Where's your x-ray head? What digital x-ray sensors do you use? So again, like you said, it gives, they like that because they know that you understand their business, and that
Right.
means that you're going to help them in ways that the typical IT person couldn't.
And they also have a different relationship to their technology than a lot of people. Dentists actually can't do their job without technology.
Absolutely. Yeah,
They
you're
know
absolutely
it.
correct. Yeah. And that amazes so many people, whenever I'm talking to people and they find out that dental is my vertical, they all, the reaction either is that's cool or really dentist, because they don't really grasp just how sophisticated the modern dental practice is. But yeah, they can't work. I mean, to a dentist these days, their network is every bit as important as air and water and power. It's a
Well,
utility for
especially
them.
with imaging is no longer on film.
Yep.
It's all digital.
It's all digital, so they're taking 2D X-rays, they're taking 3D X-rays, and that's the one thing that always blows people away is when I say that we install CT units in dental practices. Obviously, not the big laydown types that you have in hospitals, but the 3D X-ray systems that they use are CT scanners. I mean, it's a very sophisticated level of technology that you just don't expect to find in a dental office.
Right. Plus, and this is my last note on that, and we'll move
That's all right.
on. But I was amazed that I only ever touched a few dental offices, but they expected me to understand about the sound systems that they were putting into the different operatories. And I'm like, I'm the IT guy. And they go, yep, we understand that.
Yes, yes. To them, you are the everything, right? I mean, you are basically in dental offices, the IT person is the catch-all for everything not dental related.
Right.
So
Exactly. So yeah,
if
so
it
they got a closet full of sound equipment in addition to
exactly.
a closet full of technology equipment.
Exactly, and that's one thing that we were able to leverage when we started Point Clear Networks is, because I knew going in that was the way they were, it allowed us to expand our offerings into VoIP, for instance, and so it became very easy for us to walk in the door and say, not only are we going to provide the IT, but we're going to handle your phones, and we're going to source your internet circuit and bring that in for you. So we really became kind of a one-stop shop for them.
Right. Cool. All right. So moving on, the reason I actually called you here is that I was following you, as I always do, on Facebook, and you had an announcement. You've got, in fact, you're holding up a sign. So you're creating a new offering called CrossBay Digital Marketing.
Yes.
Tell us the history of that, and then kind of what you're after here.
Sure. So before I started, we have to go back to when I started Point Clear Networks, because that's where the idea actually originated at. In the time between when I left Henry Schein and I started Point Clear Networks, I had a non-compete period, a one year period where I couldn't work in this market. So I did some work for a good friend of mine, Dan Edwards, who owns an MSP called Pact One Solutions out in Nevada, which also does dental work. And so I was doing some work for him, and I was traveling all the time. But I knew, and quite honestly, I was almost at a point where I was ready to get out of IT altogether. And so I had this idea in the back of my head that I wanted to start this small business marketing company that built websites and helped small businesses, compete using the internet. And so I started working out that business plan of how I was going to do that. And before we could implement that, my wife became pregnant with our our daughter, and which was probably one of the best things that could have ever happened. But
Of course.
but so when that happened, that kind of put the kibosh on starting a new venture with no clients in a new field. But it also meant that I needed to come off the road. So that was kind of literally the birth of Point Clear Networks, right? So the marketing business kind of went, that idea kind of got shelved and put on the back burner. And then I guess about 18 months ago, or a little longer than that. So every year I take 2 weeks off. Like I take the week of 4th of July and the week between Christmas and New Year's. And I take those weeks and I use them to kind of see where I am in the business, plan for the coming year, or any course corrections if it's mid-year kind of thing. So when I did that in July of 2018, we took a trip to St. Augustine, and I was there, and the idea of the marketing business just came back into my head. And part of it was running across people like Chris Weiser and some of the other ex-MSPs who have kind of gotten into marketing. And so, I sat down with my wife and we talked about it, and I said, man, I really, I always wanted to do that, but we never could. But now we're at a point where we have the MSP business where it's functioning and it can operate on a daily basis without my intervention there every day. So I'd really kind of like to explore this. And she said, okay, let's do it. And so we started a company called Red 5 Agency, which does digital marketing, but specifically for dentists. And because we said, hey, that's our niche, that's our vertical, we know it. So let's start
So
there.
this isn't marketing to dentists. This is dentists marketing to their potential prospects.
Correct. Yeah. So we're building websites for them. We're helping, like, new dentists, when they open their practice, we'll design their logo, all of their branding materials, their business cards, letterheads, all of that kind of stuff. And then we help them run, Facebook ad campaigns and Google pay-per-click and that sort of thing. So we started that business towards the end of 2018, and it's really done well. But the one thing that I didn't account for, and that really kind of surprised me, was the number of people outside of the dental space that once they found out I was building websites, those people were coming going, hey, can you build me a website? I need some help with that. And initially I kind of pushed back against that because it wasn't, it didn't fit my plan, right? And, we're all great in the community about going to conferences and hearing people speak and everybody hammering into our head that we need to niche down, which obviously I've had great success doing. But I came to a realization that when you're doing a startup, sometimes maybe that isn't the best idea, right? When you're first starting, you need to take money where you can kind of get it. And so we were, we had all these people from outside the dental space, asking us to do websites and help them with marketing. And I pushed back, and finally, about 6 months ago, my wife and I were at dinner. We were talking about this one particular person who had asked me probably 4 times to help to build a website for him. And finally, she was like, will you just stop being an idiot and take the money?
People beg you to take their money. Eventually, you should.
Right, exactly, right. And so I said, okay. So we took this person on. We built a website for him. Everything went well. Matter of fact, it's funny because he's now actually turned into one of our biggest referral sources for new websites. So we built this website, and then it just kind of kept snowballing, people coming from outside the vertical. But at the same point in time, I have a couple of other MSP partners that I work with in the dental space who are dental specific MSPs who refer their dental customers to me for websites. So I had this business that was aimed towards dentists, and I had this messaging that I was putting out there in the website and everything. And now all of a sudden I've got people who aren't dentists coming to that website. And so it's funny, I had lunch with a potential client, and we talked, and we were like, yeah, let's do this. And she was not a dentist. And a couple of days later, she picks up the phone and she calls me, and she's like, what is up with your website? And I said, what do you mean? Right. So like my first reaction was the technical reaction, right? I'm like, is it down? Did it get hacked? So I'm like, scrambling, trying to figure out what she's talking about. And she went, no, she's like, I went to your website and it's just all these dentists. She's like, do you just love dentists or something? And so then it immediately dawned on me, I have a messaging problem, right? Right. So we didn't want to, changed the messaging for Red 5 because we've been building that brand in the dental space and we've got some traction there. So we decided that we would just start a third brand, and that's where CrossBay Digital Marketing came from. So in January of this year, we launched CrossBay, and we're going to do those same things: web design, social media advertising, pay-per-click branding, in the general SMB sector. So everything non-dental will kind of funnel through that.
Very cool. So give folks an address. Where should they go to see the kind of stuff you do and connect?
Yeah, so the website is crossbaydigital.com. And then on the dental side, that's red5agency.com, but either one of those sites. And then we have some demo sites that we've built out. It's funny. I used to send people, like, when I was talking to somebody, people always want to say, let me see an example of your work, right? So you would send them to a client site. Well, in these days, in building WordPress sites and then handing the keys over to clients, the site that you build today may not look like that
right.
in 6 weeks, right? So now we've just gotten to where we just build out, every time we build a site for a client that we really like and we say, hey, we'd like to showcase this, then we take it and clone it and pull out all of the identifying information and just make a demo site so that we can actually show people the work as we intended for it to be displayed.
That's actually a really good idea. So
yeah, well, and like I said, for one thing, you can't control what customers do once you hand them the keys to WordPress. And secondly, you don't want to throw off their analytics either by sending traffic to their site that isn't really
yeah, that's a good point.
right, isn't really for them. So building out the demo sites.
And you could just do screenshots day one, knowing that the client hasn't touched anything. But like you said, then you got all your identifying information and so forth. So
exactly, yeah. So that's we kind of felt like that was a better way. So we're building out that portfolio right now, but we do have like a crossbaysmiles.com is our dental demo site that we send everybody to so that they can kind of see
you
that.
Should definitely put a post inside the Small Business Thoughts technology community and offer your services to MSPs there, because you're, as a member, right, you can just post it up and we'll put it on the offers page. Speaking of offers, you have a referral program as well.
We do. Like I mentioned, we already work with a few MSPs. We have one in Tennessee and one in Ohio that we work with, but we would love to bring on more so that when they refer clients to us for web design and branding and digital marketing, we basically give them a 10% commission of all project work and 10% of all MRR. Which
wow.
when you start doing social media advertising, it's not hard for that to get into the thousands of dollars every month. So that could be a nice little chunk of recurring revenue for an MSP for simply just making an introduction.
Right. So is your business model that you build these things and you do the hosting?
We do, yeah. So it's kind of a managed. We do managed WordPress. So we build the site, we host it, we provide all of the back end security plugins and premium plugins, and then we take care of all the updates and whatnot. And then clients can either make changes on their own if they feel comfortable with that, or we include a couple hours of ad moves and changes in our monthly fee, so we can do that for them as well.
And how many folks do you have doing this?
So we're right now, I think we have around 20 clients on the dental side, and then we have about a half dozen on the non-dental side. So we're still trying to build that up. Very
cool. It's funny. I had a former client email me recently and say, hey, you built this website for us like 100 years ago.
Right.
And then they totally replaced it like 10 years ago. And so now they're looking at replacing it again. And she's like, they want like $1,500 to redo the website. And does that seem reasonable to you? And I'm like, don't ask me, because I spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars at a time. I'm constantly retooling all of our websites because, something that's 5 years old is ancient in this business.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pretty much if your website today is more than about 3 years old, it's probably obsolete because chances are it wasn't designed to be responsive. So it's not going to look well on tablets or phones. From a security standpoint, it's obviously outdated, especially if it's running WordPress. or any of the content management systems really. But so yeah, we hear that too, and that was one of the things that surprised me, I guess, about how many people came to us, is because we were hearing people say, hey, I went and talked to this person and they gave me a $10,000 quote, and I went and talked to this company and they gave me a $5,000 quote. So $1,500 actually is very, very reasonable,
Right.
for a semi-custom or a custom site. And we generally operate somewhere in that $1,500 to $3,500 range. It really depends on what the client's looking for.
Right.
And then we have on the dental side, and we may end up rolling this out into CrossBay, but we also do kind of like a lease model, so basically instead of them paying the whole $3,500, let's say it's $3,500, instead of them paying that all up front, they pay 50% up front, and then we finance the back end over 3 years.
So you really do have WordPress as a service.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And I know there are some people that love WordPress or some people that hate WordPress, but it really, when you look at WordPress, it powers 25% of the internet these days. And the community is so vibrant, so strong. There are plugins to do pretty much anything you want to do. I just, one of our biggest competitors here locally uses Craft as their content management system, and they constantly bash people that use WordPress. But when I sat down and looked at them side by side, it just didn't make any sense to use anything else but WordPress.
Yeah. Well, I built a community system about 15 years ago, and I had an in-house guy, and it was database driven, and it cost me like $18,000. And, then the recent community that I built 2 years ago, I don't think it was $4,000 total, A to Z, including plugins and extra software, all the subscriptions. So the world has changed quite dramatically, and it continues to change. That's the other thing, is your audience changes. Like everybody ages, and I don't know who goes to dentists, but it seems to me that there's certain audience that does all the buying, and that audience changes over time. Because even if the age range stays the same, right? It's all the parents of 7-year-olds, right? That are buying dental services. The parents born in the 70s are different than the parents born in the 90s.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so at every office that we do, every site we do is different. Because we try to take into consideration the personality of the office, and we're not officially story brand partners, but we do try to follow the build a story brand framework. I am working on going through the story brand certification process to become one of their guides, but I definitely believe in using their framework as a starting point for new sites. But what you're saying is right. Absolutely, the types of buyers as they age are different. And it's funny because I'll take dentists, for example. When I look at pediatric dental sites, 95% of them are cartoony and flashy, and look like they should be on an episode of Sesame Street. And I get it, right? They're pediatric dentists, but it's not the kids going to the website to book the appointments. It's the parents. So at some point in time, you need to, you have to kind of balance that out.
Yeah. So is there any sort of generalizable lesson that you take from having a niche over here, but then serving a totally new audience over here? Is there any kind of lessons that you pull out of that?
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely lessons that we've learned in the dental space, both on the MSP side and building websites for dentists, that have translated over. And one of the things that I always refer back to is the pumpkin plan from Mike McAllowitz. I'm sure you're probably familiar with Mike's work. So when we pumpkin planned our MSP business, even though dental was our vertical, we were kind of amazed that we figured out that we could actually niche down even further inside of dental, and that the general dentist wasn't the general dentist with 10 employees or less was not our ideal MSP customer. Because those guys tend to see IT as a necessary evil. You can't really have ROI discussions with them, that sort of thing. But group practices and specialists were a totally different animal, right? So that became our ideal client, our pumpkin, so to speak, within the MSP business.
And the really interesting point for me on that is that people are afraid to get a niche because they're like, why should I stop selling to the entire universe and only sell to one small subset? And you're saying, go deeper into a subset of the subset, that's where all the money is.
Absolutely. So when we did that exercise in Point Clear Networks, and when we realized who our ideal client avatar was, and we stopped marketing to the general dentist and started marketing to specialists and group practices, within 18 months our business doubled. So I'm a firm believer in that. But we saw an opportunity with Red 5 to take, marketing, because the people that needed the marketing help the most were the general dentists, the small guys. So the people that
Right.
weren't our ideal client at Point Clear Networks became our ideal client at Red 5. And we used to laugh, we used to kind of joke that, hey, yeah, we're helping to grow, the goal is we want to grow your business. You use Red 5 to grow your business so that you do become Point Clear Networks ideal client.
But should be successful enough to give us more money.
Exactly. So we kind of used it, a backdoor recruiting tool or marketing tool, so to speak. So there are lessons that you can take from learning, from having niches, and go back out into the general world. And sometimes it actually can be a little scary too. We did dental for so long that when we took on a very large non-dental customer in our MSP business back in 2015. And it was a little intimidating almost, because it was like suddenly we were out of our comfort zone, right?
That's interesting.
And it was a situation where we actually took over. This company had an internal IT department that they had 2 employees. They had dropped down to 1, and they just reached a point where their CEO said, "Hey, we've got 75 users, and we've got 1 IT person. This isn't working." Because what happens when he's out or he goes on vacation? And so we ended up, with the deal we worked out with him, was we absorbed him into our business, right? So we took him on board as a full-time employee, because we didn't want to lose we didn't want the brain drain of him going away, right? So we absorbed him onto our staff and took over their IT department. And it was a little, there were a couple of weeks where we were like, did we make the right decision? But I'm happy to report that we still have that client today, and they just re-upped for another 3 years with us. So that's always, it's nice to have those types of success stories when you do step outside of your vertical.
Right. So let me step back. As a business owner, talking to almost everybody who listens to this are also business owners. What do you think about running, basically 3 brands under one company? Or I don't know if you have 3 different companies, or, how is it as an owner to be running 3 brands at the same time?
So we actually are 2, in terms of legal entities, we have 2 legal entities. So Point Clear Networks, the MSP, is 1 legal entity, and then both of the marketing agencies operate under a separate legal entity, but we do operate them as different brands. It can be a little challenging, definitely. 2 is not too bad, but when you get to 3, now you have to make sure you look at the phone and realize which line you're answering. And when you're talking, now I've got to carry 3 sets of business cards because I don't know which scenario I'm going to be into. So there's some logistical challenges. But honestly, from a business owner standpoint, in terms of operating, the back end stuff, it's really, it's kind of like having kids, right? Everybody says that once you have more than 1 kid, like 2 and 3, it becomes easier and easier. I tend to think it's the same way with businesses. I mean, starting this 3rd brand really was much easier than starting the first one, because I've already been through this exercise twice. So I know what I need to do. I've got my processes developed, and so it didn't take it took some effort, but it didn't take nearly as long to stand up the 3rd brand as it did the first. And of course, by this point in time, I've been in business for so long that I feel like I've made probably every marketing mistake that you can make as a business owner. And so over the years, I've learned those lessons and learned what not to do. So every new business gets a little easier.
Very cool. Well, I wish you the absolute best of luck. And we want to send people to the website, the CrossPoint.
CrossBayDigital.com. Yep, is the website that they can go check out.
Very cool. We'll put that in the show notes. And I thank you for your time, and I wish you spectacular luck with your new adventure.
All right. Thanks, Carl. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the SMB Community Podcast. If you found this useful, interesting, or fun, please subscribe, share with your friends, and give us a thumbs up on your favorite social media. Please check out the show notes at smbcommunitypodcast.com and give us your feedback.